In this video, we're talking about the 3 most important moves in the golf swing. These are super important because they're either misunderstood or they're really poorly executed by most golfers, and that keeps them at a plateau, never really increasing their power, their accuracy, and they never really get to the next level with their game. So what are those 3? Stay tuned. Hey, don't forget to support the channel by heading over to hititlonger.com, checking out all the additional free content. Check out some of the products that I highly recommend too in the Pro Shop. All right, so the number 1 issue that I work with students in person on is the pivot. And it's sad because we now know the averages or the general motions that the PGA pros on TV do. And so once you know these things, it becomes really easy to start emulating the exact motions of a PGA pro. So for instance, we know in the pivot that the guys on TV will shift laterally around 6 inches. So look, I've got about 6 inches of chair that I need to slide down in order to get into the post. And that helps me fully transfer my weight over to the outside of my left heel, which is where everybody on TV is at impact. However, a lot of people that struggle with their swing definitely go in more into the toe or don't get to the outside of their left foot, and this signifies that they're not shifting their weight properly. Now looking from the down the line angle, we can also see that the average guy on TV, and remember this is average, some are a little bit different than others, but if you took all of them and averaged them together, the average guy on TV not only will slide to the target about 6 inches in the downswing, but will also go backwards 1 inch away from the ball. So that looked like something like this, and that's why I have the chair here. That is to show you the average guy will increase their hip flexion, kind of stick their butt out behind them a little bit, almost getting into a little bit of that squat position here. And those 2 motions together, the 6-inch lateral shift plus the -1 inch going backwards, helps get the weight over to the left foot and also helps the torso really unwind in a hurry to help you really build a lot of club head speed. Now, once you've learned this action of going 6 inches down the wall and 1 inch back, as you get better at it, you can learn to speed it up. And really, that's the only limitation on how fast you can swing the club head, is how fast you can snap your hips into position. So you start getting faster and faster at it, and your club head speed and your distance will go way, way up. So if you were to look at the pivot of a long drive pro, say somebody who's swinging in excess of 150 miles an hour, they pivot through so fast that it's almost like a blur. Our conscious eyes can't even detect what they're doing. It almost has to be watched in slow motion. And that's what you want to build towards if you want to hit the ball out there a long way. Learn it correctly first, slowly add speed until it becomes such a knee-jerk response that you're able to really speed it up in kind of a snap type action. All right, the second most important move, one of the 3 most important moves in the swing, in my opinion, is the transition from the top to drop that club into a shallow slot. This is very difficult to learn how to do if you don't understand the basic actions that cause it, but once you do, it can be very easy and very natural to learn. Now, one reason it's so difficult for golfers to drop the club into the shallow slot is because they have the first motion, the pivot, all wrong. So instead of going 6 inches and 1 inch, like we just talked about, they might go only leftwards or towards the target 2 inches and forward towards the ball 4 or 5 inches. And that's going to cause the club and the club shaft to have completely different forces acting on it as the downswing starts. And it becomes really hard to get it into any kind of slot. The other reason that most golfers cannot find this shallow slot is because they're so keen on squaring the club face that they do it really early, and often that's kind of what the steepening over the top move is, and it's an attempt to square the club face from here at the top of the swing, where actually it doesn't square up until a little bit later. So let's look at a couple of the actions required to hit that shallow slot for power and accuracy. Now, besides doing the pivot correctly, which will also allow you to keep the same amount of forward bend that you started with at address, if you can keep that forward bend the same through pivoting correctly, you can get the torso to turn, and you can get the handle of the club to not drop down this way underneath, but kind of go more in a diagonal out in front of you towards the ball and around the curve naturally. Now, in addition to that, you're going to add a little bit of unwinding with the forearm. You're going to do what's called a little bit of a supination. Supination is this action. It's going to be assisted by the upper arm. You can do the entire arm together at the shoulder like this. See, I'm turning my entire arm. So the supination is being assisted by an external rotation of the upper arm at the shoulder like that. Now, when you are able to put together the pivot with that action there, that's really what helps you drop into the slot. The action of the good handle path heading out, but not over the top, just not downward, just somewhere in the middle. That alone will help the club want to start laying down in response to the line of pull. And in addition to that, you're adding the extra unwinding of the forearm. So it looks something like this. Here we are at the top, and we're in pretty good shape. We're going to do a pivot plus an unwinding of the arm. And that really is getting the club to drop into that shallow slot, where then I can whip it through right on line. All right, let's see if I can demonstrate that okay from the down the line angle, to where you can see how the pivot helps control the handle, adding the unwinding of the forearm in there as well. And we're going to try to get this club shaft down to just above the forearm in the slot. Will really give me some good whipping power going through. All right, a good powerful straight shot. You can see in from the slow-mo that I was able to transition over, keep my hip flexion, keep my rump back, and start to slowly unwind the forearm as I reached into the slot. All right, let's head back to the face-on view for the third of what I think is the three most important moves in the golf swing. The third one is just simply so misunderstood by most golfers and actually taught really the wrong way. It's really not what the guys on TV are doing, but you're getting fooled by photographs or really slow motion video. Got to look at the forces instead. And that's right down here at the ball is this flapping move. So I'm going from extension to flexion in the right wrist. And even some golfers, they're in a little bit of a flex position or a bowed position coming right about here. They look a little bit bowed right before impact, a la Hogan, and some other people are finding that style popular again on TV, but they're going into dorsiflexion. So when you see, they're doing it very rapidly. So when you see the wrist in this position and you see a photograph or a super slow-mo video and someone is trying to point that out as a big factor in why they can hit the ball so well, well, they're not holding this through because they would never hit it anywhere. These guys are hitting it a long way, as you know from TV. The only way you can do that is a whipping action of the wrist like that, very loosely, free flapping wrist, and you're whipping it through. So of course that is timed right here. So it appears at impact like Dustin Johnson might be holding a little bit of a flexion, but believe me, he is doing this like throwing a frisbee almost. And then his right wrist is doing the opposite. It's doing that. And you think, no, of course, no matter what, I'm going to see comments down below, but Steve, that's scoopy. That's scoopy. You can't do that. You won't get any compression or anything. Nobody hits it like that. No, everybody does that on TV. If you held this angle all the way through, you'd never hit the ball anywhere. Of course, you've got to let the wrist go at the bottom. Some people just do it a little bit later than others, and those are the more the low ball hitters, and some do it a little earlier, and it's the high ball hitters. But everybody is doing this motion extremely freely and extremely quickly, like a bullwhipping action, and that heavily contributes to power. All right, let's take a look at that facet of the swing from a couple of different angles, and where I want you to see it manifesting is more in the follow through. You're going to see the left wrist in this position. You're going to see the right wrist in a slight palmar flexion position, but it's going to manifest itself in the most obvious manner right in this range here. So look for that. All right, so those are some good slow motion looks from various different angles. You can see hopefully all three of those most important moves in action, both the pivot, remember 6 inches laterally, 1 inch back, definitely not forward, definitely not stationary. You're also seeing the shallowing via the handle path and the unwinding of the forearm. And you're also seeing a good whipping action or flapping of the wrists through the impact zone for all that power. Additionally, when you have all these three mechanical fundamentals in place, you won't feel like lots of effort is necessary to get all that high club head speed. All right, so it's a beautiful day. I'm having a lot of fun hitting it long and straight. So I'm gonna hit some more, but thanks so much for watching. And as usual, hey, I'll either see you in the next video or I'll see you longer and straighter down the fairway. Everybody take good care.